Handle Your Business, a weekly podcast discussing a little of this and a little of that. Handle Your Business appropriately blends serious topics with fun topics, all in an effort to help you have a good or better life. So join me, your host, Lady Lashley, and some amazing guests every Sunday at 5 p.m. to explore everything from financial management to dealing with relationship challenges. Put it in your calendar every Sunday from 5 p.m. Tune in to Handle Your Business to get you ready for the week ahead. For more details, follow at Lady Lashley TT on Instagram and Facebook. Handle Your Business. Welcome to another episode of Handle Your Business with yours truly, Lady Lashley. Today I have joining me the team lead of foster care at the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, Anjuli Tewarie. Hi, Anjuli. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you so much for having us today.
All right. Let me congratulate you all on the good work that you're doing in terms of raising awareness around foster care and adoption, particularly foster care, which is not something that's official in our society, even though we may practice it in other unofficial ways. And definitely looking forward to having this conversation, particularly with respect to we have in Tobago and Trinidad and even in the Caribbean region, many people who are not able to have biological children. And for various reasons, there's a stigma attached to that. As you know, in Trinidad and Tobago, we are not the most sensitive people naturally. We show our love in, interesting ways. And so sometimes people raise questions around childbearing and child rearing, not realizing that they may be hurting some people and that kind of thing. And what I recognize most recently from some conversations with some people that I know is that they had not considered foster care as a real, possibility for them to be able to share the love that they have. Because there's some people in our society, in the world, who don't want any children at all. But there's some who would like to be able to share love with children, maybe look after children for a short space of time or for a longer period of time. And what I like about what Children's Authority is offering, legally that is the opportunity for these people and any other citizen of Trinidad and Tobago to be able to have that opportunity as they help this country to take care of our young people, babies to children who are under 18 years old. Yeah?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. So what I'd like first off, before we dive into, the meat of the matter, just because this is a legal scenario, I would like for you to tell me, specific to the Children's Authority, what is the definition of foster care as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago and our laws, and how does foster care work in Trinidad and Tobago?
So, and I want to kind of touch on a couple of things you spoke about, because one thing that strikes me as really important in Trinidad and Tobago is that we have a lot of love to give. There's so many people out there who, like you said, they're not able to have children of their own, but they show love to children, whether it's nieces, nephews, children at church, in school. They have so much love to give, and we really want to sort of inform persons of the opportunities out there, because there are opportunities that children can receive that love and affection and stability and care, and it doesn't have to be through biological means. But like you said, and it's something I want to sort of underpin everything here, foster care is a temporary option versus adoption. And I always lead my conversations by starting off that saying that foster care is not adoption. They're two separate legal processes, both which are managed by the Children's Authority. Foster care is temporary, and the reason for that is, in the background, we are still trying to see that we can keep children with their families. There's so many kids out there. We see it day to day in the newspaper, on the news, on social media, children who are subject to abuse and trauma and neglect. And we are still trying to keep children with their families where appropriate, possible, and in their best interest. And sometimes some families may need a little time to heal. And I feel as though foster care is a beautiful option to give those families time to heal and put things in place and give that child that love and stability. So foster care is something that we encourage patients to think about versus adoption, which is permanent. Adoption is for children who have no family options, where their family have given up consent with regards to releasing those children to be freed for adoption, and only then can children be adopted. But we don't want persons to be scared of this temporary nature of foster care. So whilst both foster care and adoption are underpinned by the package of children's legislation, which is mandates certain things and assessments, etc., foster care is an option for children who are not able to live with their birth families due to a range of circumstances. But the ultimate goal of foster care is to provide a safe, stable, and nurturing home environment for children until the possibility of them maybe being reunited with their family, maybe being adopted, or maybe being placed with a fit person, or sometimes children may even stay in foster care for a long-term period. But one thing to note, whilst a child is in foster care, we don't X out their parents. No way, no how. We don't want persons to think that, we're separating children unnecessarily from their families. Parents still have rights when children in foster care. They still have an opinion. We still share updates with them about their children, how they're doing in school. We send them pictures. We have visits with the children and parents. So we always protect the identity and safety of our foster parents. But we want that child to have that sort of family bonding and relationship still. We're not Xing it out at all. And foster care to me is that sort of enabler of keeping our society a strong, bonded society.
Right, lovely. I like that, and I like the fact that foster carers, foster parents, foster carers are protected by law, because sometimes, especially, you might be going into this not knowing what to expect. I mean, we are in a society where it has been sort of relatively safe in terms of people don't go off in the way that you see happening in the Western world on television and so on. But at the same time, everybody may have their concerns and want to know that they are in an arrangement where they don't feel as if they're being threatened in any way. With respect to people who may be considering foster care, and this is single people or married couples. I don't know what the law speaks to in terms of common law relationships, those sorts of partners and so on. Can you explain what type of person can apply for foster care?
Sure.
Can a single woman apply? Can a single man apply? Can a couple who are not married but they've been living together for a certain number of years, can they apply? What are those sort of requirements?
So the good thing is, even though our legislation is legislatively mandated and guided, foster care the focus of foster care is love. So if it is that you have love to give, that's the number one criteria. Whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're cohabitating, whether you're male, female, an older individual, once you are able to care for a child and you have that love to give and you can provide a safe environment, and those are things that we do in our checks, you can apply to become a foster care provider. There's nothing in our legislation preventing individuals. See, right now, at present, we have a single male person who's an approved foster care provider. We have lots of older persons who are foster care providers. And once they're healthy and able to care for the age of the child that they have in their care, it's not a problem at all. So we are very welcoming. To us, the focus is that love and safety and stability. And another thing that we do sort of stress on is, say, for example, you are a single foster parent, and which we have many of, and they're all excellent. We do encourage persons to acknowledge that parenting a child is a big responsibility. And in spite of how many times we think we're superwoman and superman, you do need support. And we encourage persons to establish who your support network is, because you will rely on these persons in taking care of this child, whether it's in case of an emergency, whether it's for childcare, if something pops up, if you have to stay late at work, pick them up from school. So we really encourage patients to think about these things in advance. What is your setup now? How will things change if a child comes into your care? Who will support you through this process?
Right, that's lovely. I want to put you on the spot a bit, and I don't know if you've had any sort of situation with this, but we're going, although legally, I don't think that Trinidad and Tobago laws acknowledge the people who identify as LGBTQ. But let's say in Tobago, and I'm using the Tobago in this scenario because this is where I'm based, there's still a lot of taboo around particularly gay men. People may not necessarily have an issue if somebody who they think is, or who has said, well, hey, I live a lesbian lifestyle. If somebody is a gay man and meets all the criteria that you all have set out and so on, that person applies either individually or along with a partner to be able to foster a child. Is it that let's say somebody else raises a concern and say, well, why are you putting a child with a gay person? Is that something that the Children's Authority looks at? Is that something that people should be concerned about in terms of people who may identify as gay and may be open to exploring foster care?
So, Glendora, you are putting me on the spot, but it's a question that always comes up. Trust me, no matter how many times it goes, there is a concern. It's a question that pops up all the time. And I kind of revert to my original response when we spoke about this, talking about who can apply. My focus is love. If you can provide love to this child who comes into your care, and we have assessed you to be safe, your home is safe, your associates are safe, your background checks are safe, that's what we're focusing on. At present, in Trinidad and Tobago, as you're aware, gay marriage is not recognized. But if a single individual comes to us, and they are presenting as a safe, loving, stable home, and they can provide that stability for a child, that's what our focus is.
Okay, that's good, and that's fair enough. One can understand that. Now, in terms of, again, things that people may consider when looking at the possibility of fostering children, and their babies to under 18, because the law says your child, once you're under 18, 0 to 18, what are some of the considerations that you would like to have, or maybe tell the potential applicants, potential foster carers, foster parents to think about? I know for one, many people think about money. Do I have the money to take care of a child? Is there something like a particular budget that one must be concerned about? Is there any assistance, stipend-wise, any sort of monetary or other assistance that will be given to the approved ones?
Sure. So one of the criteria when we are doing our assessment is we look at whether a foster care provider can financially provide for themselves, because a stipend is provided for the foster children who come into your home, but we want persons to acknowledge that that stipend is not a payment to the foster parent. That stipend is money attached to the foster child to meet their basic needs. So different children will receive a different stipend, whether it's a baby, an older child, a teenager, a child with special needs. Depending on the age and needs of the child, the stipend will be different. But because the foster care unit, we continue to do monitoring, that spending of that stipend is something that we do also monitor, because we need to make sure people aren't abusing that stipend. So it's something to remember that when you're applying, you have to be able to cater to your own needs: transport, mortgage, rent, your own bills. And if it is that, you don't have that extra funds to care for a child, that's okay, because the stipend will cater for it. But we do advise persons, because obviously there's a checks and balances with regards to the government funding. You should have some sort of, I want to say, a safety net with regards to money towards the expenses of a child coming into your care when you first are approved, because money is paid at the end of each month. So we don't expect you to come with nothing to start with, because we will assist you with donations. We will assist you with hampers, clothing, whatever it is that you may need to start up with. But you have to be able to manage that money and prove to us that you can manage the funds which are allocated to that child.
Okay, lovely. And is it that before somebody even makes the application, do you tell them the potential range based on the age or the situation of the child, in terms of, so that they will know, okay, if I am making X amount and this child costs approximately this amount, will that amount that you're giving as a stipend work out, or that's only shared after applicants are approved?
Yeah, so we tend not to say what the amount of the stipend is in advance, because we want to sort of eliminate people from coming and applying for the stipend, because there's so many people out there who might want to abuse it. So we would share that with you once you are approved, and the stipend that we pay would have been sort of approved by our board, and it's something that we would review to make sure it can meet the needs of the child in your care. If once a child comes into your care and those needs maybe increase, or maybe that child is discovered to have an additional need, then that stipend can be increased depending on the nature of what is needed. But for example, so say, I'm giving an example here. A foster parent comes and say, I ran out of money for food this month for the child. And then we ask them, well, how was the stipend spent? And they would inform us that, well, I bought 2 pairs of outfits for them to go to church and 2 brand new shoes for them to go to church. So for us, we'll be like, well, if you look at the basic needs of a child, food would have been more important,
Yeah.
Pampers would have been more important, as opposed to maybe clothing or going out clothing that we could have assisted with. So we do share budgeting tips with foster parents in advance. It's part of our training, and that's something to also point out. Before you become a foster care provider, we actually do provide you with some basic training, and once you are approved, you do receive additional ongoing training because we want to make sure that you have the skill set to care for the needs of the child coming into your care. Because some of the children who come into our care, they've been through a lot, they've been through a lot of trauma, they've seen a lot of things. So we want to make sure that we give the foster parents that support, that training that is necessary to help them do their job best.
Right. That's awesome. And I have a couple of questions, well, a few questions coming out of that. In terms of one, if one applies and one is approved, and then after that conversation, the person does not want to be considered immediately or considered at all again based on how they're feeling. Is that something that's worked out then and there in terms of, let's say I come and apply and then you all tell me I'm approved, we have the initial conversation, and for whatever reason, the person is saying, well, listen, I can't do this right now, I don't want to do it right now.
So let me share a little bit about the assessment process, because I want persons to understand that before we approve or provide somebody as a foster care provider, there are certain steps we have to go through. And like I said, these are legislatively mandated because we need to ensure that if a child is being removed from a place of danger, we're putting them into a safe home. So these are steps that we can't skip. So we actually have to do a few steps, and we try our best to not extend these too long, but we need to make sure it's a thorough process. Mm-hmm. So we actually have persons fill in an application form. They have to do a medical. They have to obtain a police certificate of character for all members of the household over the age of 18. We come in to do a home assessment to make sure the home is safe. We interview all members of the household to make sure that everybody's on board and they understand what foster care is. So if grandma is living at home, if uncle is living at home, we interview everybody who's supporting that child. We do psychological assessments, which is some multiple choice questions to make sure that these persons are who they say they are. We're talking about the abuse potential, the family dynamics. We also do background checks and we do reference checks. So these are all our checklist of things that we're doing to make sure that these individuals are safe, consistent, committed individuals. So when you say to me that somebody goes through the assessment, it becomes approved, and then they get to the end and they say, this is not for me, or I've changed my mind, we feel as though that process has different steps and stages where you're interacting with the foster care unit. And it's an intense process. Mm-hmm. And we hope that if you realize throughout that process, that even at the training stage, that this is not something for you, we stop it then and there, as opposed to sort of wasting your time. Right. We don't want to draw this process unnecessarily. We want to make sure that when you're approved, you're the right person for it, which is not to say that once you get approved and you get a child in your care, you may not change your mind. But we do ask persons to really think about this. This is a big commitment. It's an important thing for a child. And if we place a child in your care, the last thing we want to hear is that you've changed your mind and come and take the child back. Because to me, that's rejection one more time for this child, and that's something that we try our best to prevent.
Right, but I was specifically more asking before the child is placed, in terms of the support. Sometimes maybe, okay, people may lose a job, they may have a family situation, they may get ill.
No, and that's fine. If those things pop up, definitely we are flexible. It's something that we would sort of keep you on the back burner if something has sort of changed in the process. I would say the application process can take about 3 to 4 months if there are no red flags in your assessment. But if at the end of that something has changed, certainly it's something that we can sit on for a little bit, but we can't sit on it indefinitely. Right. So if it is, 6 months to a year have passed and that circumstance has not resolved, we may need to sort of bank your application and maybe reassess after a certain period if things have changed.
Gotcha. Now I want to go into the training. I don't know how much you can share in depth about the type of training that one will receive after they are approved. But I would like to go into that because some of the children, they're babies and so on, and there may be issues that are medical that some children may have. There are issues that are maybe involving violence and neglect and abandonment and all those sorts of things. So just in terms of the nature of the training that the approved foster carers, foster parents will have, can you speak to that in terms of, like if one is considering, and of course you never know if you may get somebody coming to your home who may be a victim of sexual abuse or a victim of
Exactly.
neglect, that kind of thing. Being able to, I suppose, be a bit proactive now when they're hearing this podcast before they actually submit an application to be able to say, well, okay, can I prepare myself mentally to be able to deal with that? Obviously, you never really fully prepared until you're in the situation, but just an
Sure.
idea as to what the training looks like.
Definitely. So before I tell you about the training, just one thing to mention. So there's different types of children who come into foster care. Some of them have been through trauma, neglect, and abuse, but not all. Some of them we do get, and it's just that they don't or they can't stay with their families or there's nowhere for them. Every child is different. When we do our assessment with you, we do ask you the type of child that you're comfortable with, not just age, gender, even race, We ask you what you're comfortable with, and then we work with that. So if it is that you say to us, I don't feel very comfortable with caring for a child who's been sexually abused because I don't feel as though I have the skill set, that's totally your choice. We don't want to force you into something that's out of your comfort zone, but we do want to sort of maybe train you, and that's where the training comes in, to sort of guide you in some of the things that children have been through. They could. So even in our training, we sort of maybe give you some worst case scenarios because we'd rather prepare you, because you never know what this child is coming with. Sometimes we may have loads of information on a child before they come into foster care. And sometimes if a child comes to us in sort of emergency circumstances at very short notice, we don't really know that much, but we will put them through an assessment to find out as much that we can medically and psychologically, and we will share that with the foster parents. But our training, so it is mandatory for each foster parent to attend the training prior to approval. So you would not be able to be approved unless you do commit to that training. It is in-house training. So we get our sort of specialists within the Children's Authority, our psychologists, our social workers, our doctors, our legal officers to do this training with you. And we sort of try to cover a broad range of topics because each person coming into foster care, they have different skill sets of their own. You may be somebody who's never had any children of your own, or you may have had somebody who's had many children, all grown up now, successful, so they have tons of experience. You may have somebody who babysits for nieces and nephews, or somebody who really has always loved children but has never had the opportunity to have children in their care. You may have a nurse, a social worker, a doctor who has those sort of specialist skills, or maybe somebody who just sort of has a big heart and really wants to give back. So we try to give a very broad training. We deal with topics such as the legal aspects of foster care. We talk about the difference between foster care and adoption. We talk about child development, different stages, attachment. We talk about basic medical child care. So we're talking from babies up to teenagers, the different issues they may come into. We do child protection issues. So we talk about abuse and trauma and suicide and all those things, the things that nobody wants to talk about, but things that are very real that our children are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. We do things like behavior management, and that's a big thing because one thing to point out is that corporal punishment is not allowed in foster care. And that's something that pops up a lot when we do our sensitizations in Tobago in particular. So you're not able to utilize corporal punishment. So we give you different behavior management strategies. We also do things like child safety, how to make your home safe, how to ensure that you're doing safe things in case of emergencies like burns, how to react appropriately. And once you finish this basic training, like I said, we continue to do ongoing training with our foster care providers once they are approved. But we try to at least cover some of the major points before you are approved.
Right. That sounds pretty comprehensive. I know you said how to react with burns and so on. Is basic first aid, like the standard first aid course, is that part of it, or that's something that you just advise the potential carers to maybe pursue?
So basic first aid has now become part of our ongoing training. So we do not, because the assessment process is a thorough one, we try our best to sort of give snapshots of certain areas. So we don't conduct the basic first aid prior to the assessment and approval. But once you are approved, you will be exposed to it at some point. So just maybe, I think 2 days ago, actually, we did conduct basic first aid training with our foster care providers in Tobago, actually.
That's excellent. That's really, really good to hear, because I think that that's something that we overlook in.
Absolutely.
We overlook things like emergency plans to get out of your house. I mean, we
Exactly.
have fires, we have all sorts of things now.
It's the
Flooding
kind
is
of
a big
things we
thing.
take for granted, and now we see it in the news all the time. A fire
Exactly.
happens, and the burglar proof, safety with pools. We
Yes.
have pools for children, and so such tragic things happen. Something with dogs, having your dogs tied up safely. So these are things that we deal with in our child safety section in our training.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. I like that. With respect to, you mentioned attachment before, and I want to go to attachment because there are, as I'm thinking about it now, two different types of attachment, because you have the people who already have children of their own or who have cared for children. They too can be attached. But I was initially thinking about attachment that may be formed with a foster carer, foster parent who have never had a biological child of their own. And let's say that person takes on a baby, a teenager, whatever. You know that when relationships start working, and the bond is forming, even if it may be a little controversial at times. Once there's love there, people become attached to other people, the carer and the child. So in terms
Definitely.
of attachment and what the authority, what sort of support the authority provides, if whether or not in the pre-training there's a sort of specific training for people who have never had biological children, because that may be slightly different as opposed to if you're accustomed to caring for your own or even somebody else. What does attachment look like when for that potential foster carer?
So I'm actually going to answer this question, and I'm going to start with a quote. And I use this quote all the time because to me it's profound. To me, this is the definition of what foster care is about. And the quote is, "Don't let the fear of loving a child who might leave deter you. Let the fear of a child not knowing love drive you." Now, the reason I like this quote so much is because a lot of people use the excuse of, oh, I can't, I don't want to invest in this child. I'm afraid of getting attached. And if I had to say goodbye, what's the point? I want a child forever. And that's why we have such a long waiting list to be an adoptive parent, because people want that permanency. People don't want to say goodbye. And the truth is, if you sign up for foster care, you are going to be saying goodbye at some point, more than likely. In very few circumstances, you may not, because that child can stay in long-term foster care. But it's kind of interesting because as adults, we have said goodbye to so many people in so many ways, in so many stages of our lives. We've said goodbye to teachers, to people, to children who've gone off to study. We've said goodbye to friends when we leave different institutions, to co-workers. Saying goodbye is part of life. And I feel as though we focus so much on, oh, I'm going to get so attached. How can I say goodbye? When the focus should really be, I can give this child a life-changing experience. I can give them love, even if it's for a short period. And that should be the focus. We need to reframe our thinking in, oh, I don't want to get attached. What's the point? As opposed to, for this period, no matter how short it is, this child can know love. They can know that they are worthy and that they have stability and they don't have to be afraid. And I think that's what the focus should be. If we're really in it for the right reasons, the child should be the focus and not us saying goodbye. We will support you in saying goodbye. It's going to be hard. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be tough, but you can do it. And people have done it. And the fact that we know that children can potentially be placed back with their families, that's an amazing thing. I think if we have that opportunity, why should we get in the way of that? Why should we want to prevent children from being with their families? I think we should at least try as a society, So if it is that you don't feel you can do it, and that's fine. There are other options, such as adoption, but foster care really is about saying goodbye, and it's okay. There's this catchphrase in the Western system of foster care in the States. They have hashtag get attached. We keep making attachment sound like this bad thing, but getting attached means that you have love in your heart to give. And I think that's wonderful. So go ahead and get attached, and it's okay. When it's time for that child to move on, we support them just like we support you. And knowing that if they leave your care, it's because they're going to a place where they will be equally loved and stability is provided. I think that's something that we should focus on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope that kind of answered the question.
Yeah. That's actually lovely. I was thinking about it and just kind of even thinking about the reality of, as you said, once there's the love involved, I mean, I have a biological child, and I always say that it was through childbirth and having an actual baby in my hand, not knowing what to do, how to even hold the child, that I think I learned, what love is. And
Yeah.
when you talk to parents, especially some mothers, and well, even the fathers who are there, who've gone through a situation of raising a child, and they tell you, listen, I would do anything for my child. You can
Yeah.
relate to that, I suppose, because you've had your own experience. So that's the thing. And for me, I think that a lot of people outside of, yes, we do have people who are, not necessarily along the loving path for different reasons. But I think that the average person has love, even some of the people we deem to be bad people and so on. Different things happen in our lives, but many people have love to give. And so obviously you all are going to approve fit people. So those people who get in and, who may be exploring it, I'm just guessing because I don't know. It seems as if it would be a worthwhile venture. It may open you up emotionally and make you extremely vulnerable, but I mean, that is life. So
I think that's okay. We have our psychologists, we do our counseling sessions. We try to sort of build up our foster parents and give them that resilience. It is a tough job. It's a big commitment, but it's something definitely that's worthwhile. It's something you have to know what you're signing up for from the get-go. We ask this, and then that's why our process, every step of the way, I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes when I'm telling persons, because we don't want persons to utilize foster care as a shortcut into adoption. They're two separate processes. They're two different types of children in the scheme of things. So we want persons to recognize that from the start. And saying goodbye does not have to be a bad thing. We will support you through that process, definitely. But it's a big thing, to consider when considering foster care.
Yeah. I love it. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I want you to share the information for the Children's Authority specific to the foster care department, foster care unit, so that whenever this podcast is listened to, for those who may seriously consider foster care, for those people to be able to reach out and ask the necessary questions and perhaps come in and have a consultation on the possibilities of fostering a child in Trinidad and Tobago.
Sure. So if somebody's interested, they can give us a call on 627-0748 or on extension 40988. That's the foster care unit. Or they can email us at fostercare@ttchildren.org, or you can go on our website, which is www.ttchildren.org, where you can download the application package. You can see frequently asked questions, but give us a call, have a chat, find out if foster care is for you, and we will send you the application package and let you know what the next steps are.
Right. I know the head office is based in Trinidad, and you gave a Trinidad landline. For the people in Tobago, they also need to call this landline. They can't necessarily go into the office in Tobago to ask anything.
They can call us on the same landline, speak to the foster care team. Right now we are based in Trinidad. We will be coming over to Tobago hopefully soon. The Tobago office, you can actually, if you call us and say you're from Tobago and you want to walk into the Tobago office, you can, but we do recommend that you give us a call and have a chat with us first on the phone before you go down to the office.
All right, lovely. Well, go down, up, across, depending on what part of the island that they're on.
Yes.
Anjuli, I really appreciated the time that you took to have this conversation with me. It is a very, very important conversation. And like I said, just from my personal network of people that I know many would be interested in hearing this, and then they can make up their minds. We have had this conversation so that whoever is listening, when you get the information, you can handle your business. You can make up your mind as to what you want to do. Been chatting with Anjuli Tewarie, the head of the foster care unit at the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much. Handle Your Business, a weekly podcast discussing a little of this and a little of that. Handle Your Business appropriately blends serious topics with fun topics, all in an effort to help you have a good or better life. So join me, your host, Lady Lashley, and some amazing guests every Sunday at 5 p.m. to explore everything from financial management to dealing with relationship challenges. Put it in your calendar every Sunday from 5 p.m. Tune in to Handle Your Business to get you ready for the week ahead. For more details, follow at Lady Lashley TT on Instagram and Facebook. Handle Your Business.